The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside the weathered general store in Nevada City, California, and Lydia Jenkins tumbled out more than stepped down, her legs giving way the moment her boots touched the dusty ground. The afternoon sun of July 1878 beat down mercilessly as she collapsed against the wooden wheel, her body racked with fever and chills despite the summer heat. She had been traveling for 3 weeks from St. Louis, each day worse than the last, and now she could barely remember why she had come west in the first place, only that staying in Missouri would have meant death of a different kind. Yates Bradford was loading supplies into his wagon when he heard the commotion. He turned from securing a sack of grain to see a woman in a dusty gray traveling dress sliding down the side of the stagecoach, her face pale as moonlight and glistening with perspiration. Without hesitation, he dropped the rope he was holding and crossed the street in long strides, his weathered boots kicking up small clouds of California dust. "Madam," he caught her just as her knees buckled completely. Up close, he could feel the heat radiating from her body, and her breathing came in shallow, rapid gasps. Her eyes, a striking green even dulled by illness, looked up at him with a mixture of fear and desperation. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I have nowhere to go. I thought I could make it to the boarding house, but I cannot walk." The stagecoach driver, a grizzled man named Hutchins, climbed down with her single carpet bag. She paid to Nevada City, been sick the whole way from Sacramento. Told her she should have stopped there to see a doctor, but she insisted on coming here. Yates held the woman steady, supporting most of her weight. She weighed hardly anything at all, and he could feel how thin she had become beneath the layers of her traveling clothes. "The boarding house is full up with minors. It is no place for a sick woman anyway, even if Mrs. Penelope had room." "I have money," Lydia managed to say, though the world was spinning around her. "I can pay for a doctor for a room. I just need someone to help me get there." Yates looked down at her drawn face, at the way she trembled against him, and made a decision that would change both their lives. "My ranch is 2 miles north. I have a spare room and I can tend to you there. It is not proper, having an unmarried woman under my roof without a chaperone, but you need help now, not after we sort out propriety." "I cannot impose on a stranger," she protested weakly, but her body betrayed her words by sagging further against him. "You are not imposing if I am offering." He looked at Hutchins. "Help me get her into my wagon." Between the two men, they managed to settle Lydia onto the wagon seat. Yates retrieved her carpetbag and tossed it in the back with his supplies, then climbed up beside her. She had already begun to list to one side, and he had to wrap an arm around her shoulders to keep her upright. "What is your name?" he asked as he urged the horses forward. "Lydia Jenkins," she murmured. "From St. Louis. Yates Bradford. I run a cattle ranch north of here. Not fancy, but it is clean and quiet. You will be safe there." She wanted to thank him, to explain herself, to tell him she was not the kind of woman who normally found herself at the mercy of strange men in unfamiliar towns, but the fever had stolen her words. She was only dimly aware of the wagon rolling through town, of curious faces turning to watch, of the landscape changing from clustered buildings to open grassland dotted with pine trees. The ranch house appeared through her hazy vision like a mirage, a solid single-story structure of timber and stone with a covered porch running along the front. Beyond it, she could make out a barn, a corral with horses, and the distant shapes of cattle grazing on the hillside. "Almost there," Yates said, his voice steady and reassuring. "Just hold on a bit longer." He brought the wagon right up to the porch steps and jumped down, then carefully lifted Lydia in his arms. She made a weak sound of protest at the intimacy, but he ignored it, carrying her inside and through a main room with a stone fireplace and simple furniture to a small bedroom at the back of the house. The room was spare but clean, with an iron-framed bed covered in a quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a single window that looked out toward the mountains. He laid her on the bed as gently as he could and pulled off her dusty boots, then covered her with a light sheet. "I am going to get you some water and cool cloths," he said. "Try to rest." Lydia's eyes followed him as he left the room. Her mind struggled to comprehend what was happening. She had come west to escape her stepbrother's determination, to marry her off to his business associate, a cruel man 3 times her age who had buried 2 wives already. She had used the last of her mother's hidden savings to buy the stagecoach ticket, planning to find work as a teacher or seamstress in California, to start fresh, where no one knew her and no one could force her into a life she did not want. But somewhere along the journey, she had fallen ill, growing sicker with each passing day until she could barely hold her head up. She had chosen Nevada City almost at random from the stagecoach route, knowing only that it was far enough from St. Louis that her stepbrother would never find her. Yates returned with a basin of cool water and several clean cloths. He sat on the edge of the bed and began gently wiping her face and neck, the cool water making her shiver despite the fever. "How long have you been sick?" he asked. "A week, perhaps longer." "It started as a cough, then the fever came. I thought it would pass." "You have been traveling sick for a week." His tone held reproach. "That was foolish." "I had no choice," she said, and tears suddenly spilled from her eyes. "I had to leave. If I had stayed, it would have been worse than any sickness." He did not press her for details, sensing there was a story there that she was not yet ready to tell. Instead, he focused on making her comfortable, changing out the cloths as they grew warm, helping her sip water from a tin cup. When she began coughing, he supported her shoulders until the spasm passed, alarmed by the deep, wet sound of it. "This is more than a simple cold," he said. "It sounds like it might be pneumonia. I have some experience with illness, from tending cattle and men injured on the ranch, but you may need a proper doctor." "Please," she said, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "No doctor. They ask questions, they tell people. I cannot let anyone know I am here." Yates studied her face, seeing the genuine fear in her eyes. "Someone is looking for you." "Yes." She did not elaborate, and he did not ask. "All right. No doctor for now. But if you get worse, I am bringing one whether you like it or not. I am not letting you die in my spare room to protect your secrets." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "You are very direct. I find it saves time." He wrung out another cloth. "Now rest. I will make some broth and you are going to drink it even if I have to spoon-feed you myself." Over the next 3 days, Lydia drifted in and out of feverish sleep. Yates tended to her with a care that surprised them both, bringing her broth and water, changing her sweat-soaked bedding, cooling her fever with damp cloths. He slept in a chair in the main room, waking every few hours to check on her, to make sure she was still breathing, still fighting. On the 4th morning, the fever finally broke. Lydia woke to find sunshine streaming through the window and Yates sitting in a chair he had pulled close to the bed, his head tilted back and his eyes closed in exhausted sleep. She took the opportunity to really look at him for the first time. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was rugged rather than handsome, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days of stubble and lines around his eyes that spoke of long hours squinting into the sun. His hands, resting on his knees, were broad and work-worn, the hands of a man who made his living through physical labor. She stirred slightly, and his eyes opened immediately, alert despite his obvious fatigue. "The fever broke," he said, sitting up straighter. "How do you feel?" "Weak," she admitted, "but clearer. The fog in my head is gone." She pushed herself up slightly against the pillows, and he immediately reached out to help her. "You have been caring for me. Someone had to." "Why?" The question came out more bluntly than she intended. "Why would you take in a complete stranger, risk the impropriety, spend days nursing someone you do not even know?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said finally. "Childbirth. The baby did not survive either. I was out on the range, checking on cattle, and by the time I got back, it was too late. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done, but I have always wondered if I had been here, if I could have helped somehow." He met her eyes. "When I saw you collapse in town, I knew I could not just walk away. Maybe I could not save them, but I could save you." Lydia felt tears prick her eyes again. "I am so sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago." He stood up. "You need to eat something more substantial than broth. I will make eggs and bread." Over the next week, Lydia grew stronger. Yates helped her to a chair by the window so she could sit in the sunshine, brought her books from his small collection, and made sure she ate regular meals. She learned that he had come to California 10 years earlier from Texas, drawn by the promise of open land and opportunity. He had built the ranch from nothing, slowly accumulating cattle and horses, and now ran a modest but successful operation with the help of 2 hired hands who lived in the bunkhouse near the barn. "They are good men," he assured her when she worried about what they might think of her presence. "They know you have been ill and that I am helping you. Neither of them will gossip in town. Still, people will talk. A woman alone with a man, it is not decent. Let them talk. I have never cared much for what people think, and I doubt you would have run away from St. Louis if you were overly concerned with society's rules." She looked at him sharply. "I never said I was running away. You did not have to. A woman traveling alone, desperate enough to keep moving even when seriously ill, afraid of doctors and questions. It does not take much to puzzle out that you are hiding from something or someone." Lydia folded her hands in her lap, deciding how much to tell him. He had saved her life and asked for nothing in return. He deserved at least some of the truth. "My mother died 2 years ago," she began. "She remarried when I was young, after my father died. My stepfather was not a kind man, but my mother did what she had to do to survive. When he died last year, he left everything to his son from his first marriage, my stepbrother Thomas. Thomas decided that I was his property to dispose of as he saw fit. He arranged a marriage to one of his business associates, a man named Horace Whitmore, who is 53 years old and has a reputation for cruelty. His first 2 wives both died under suspicious circumstances, but he has money and influence, so no questions were ever asked." Yates's expression darkened. "And you refused." "I refused. I said I would rather die unmarried than become his 3rd victim. Thomas locked me in my room and said I would agree eventually, that he would starve me into compliance if necessary. But my mother had hidden some money over the years, gold coins sewn into the lining of her jewelry box. She told me about it before she died, said it was for emergencies. I used it to bribe the housekeeper to help me escape. I left in the middle of the night with nothing but what I could carry in one bag." "How did you get sick?" "The first stagecoach broke down outside of Kansas City. We were stranded for 2 days waiting for a replacement, sleeping rough in a barn. It was cold and damp, and by the time we got moving again, I had developed a cough. But I could not stop. I knew Thomas would be looking for me, and I had to get as far away as possible." Yates leaned back in his chair, processing everything she had told him. "He will not find you here. Nevada City is small enough that strangers stand out, so we would know if anyone came asking questions. And you will stay here as long as you need to, until you are fully recovered and have decided what you want to do next. I cannot stay here indefinitely. It is too much of an imposition, and people will talk. Then we will figure something else out when the time comes. For now, focus on getting your strength back. As summer deepened, Lydia regained her health. The cough faded, her appetite returned, and color came back to her cheeks. She began to help around the house, insisting that she could not simply sit idle while Yates worked from dawn to dusk. She cooked meals, mended clothes, tended the small vegetable garden behind the house that had been neglected since his wife's death. She found a rhythm in the work, a peace she had never known in her stepbrother's house, where she had been treated as an unwanted burden. Yates found himself looking forward to coming back to the house each evening, to the smell of cooking and the sight of Lydia moving around the kitchen. She had filled an emptiness he had not fully acknowledged, brought life back into spaces that had felt hollow for too long. He was careful to maintain proper distance, to remember that she was a guest under his protection, but he could not help noticing the way lamplight caught in her auburn hair, or how her eyes crinkled when she smiled, or the sound of her laughter when one of the ranch hands told a particularly bad joke at dinner. One evening in late August, they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. The air had finally cooled after a hot day, and crickets chirped in the grass. Lydia had been quiet all through dinner, and Yates sensed she had something on her mind. "I have been thinking," she said finally. "I should start looking for work. I cannot stay here forever, and I need to support myself. Perhaps the school needs a teacher, or there might be a position as a housekeeper or shop assistant in town." The thought of her leaving filled Yates with unexpected dismay. "You do not have to rush into anything. You are still rebuilding your strength. I am well now, thanks to you, and I need to think about my future. I came west to build a new life, and I cannot do that by hiding on your ranch." "Is that what you feel you are doing? Hiding?" She considered the question. "Not hiding exactly, but I am not moving forward either. I am in a kind of limbo, neither here nor there." He was quiet for a long moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. "What if you stayed?" he said. "Not as a guest or a hired hand, but as my wife." Lydia's head whipped around to stare at him. "What? Marry me," he said, turning to face her. "I know it is sudden, and I know we have only known each other for 2 months, but I have not felt this content, this alive, since before Margaret died. You fit here, Lydia. You fit with me, and I think if you are honest with yourself, you feel it too. Yates, I cannot marry you just because I need security. That would not be fair to you. I am not asking you to marry me for security. I am asking because I have fallen in love with you." The words came out simple and direct, like everything else he said. "I love the way you sing while you cook, and how you talk to the chickens like they can understand you. I love that you are not afraid of hard work, and that you have opinions about everything from politics to the best way to make biscuits. I love your strength and your courage, and the fact that you would rather risk death than live a life that was not your own choosing." Tears spilled down Lydia's cheeks. "I care for you deeply," she admitted. "More than I thought I could care for anyone after what I went through with Thomas and his plans. But I do not want you to think you have to rescue me. I do not want to be a burden you take on out of obligation." "You are not a burden." He reached out and took her hand, his rough palm warm against hers. "You are a gift I did not expect and do not deserve, but I am selfish enough to want to keep you anyway." She looked at their joined hands, at the calluses on his fingers and the strength in his grip. She thought about the gentle way he had cared for her when she was sick, the respect he had shown her, the way he listened when she talked and valued her thoughts. She thought about how safe she felt here, not just physically safe but emotionally safe, free to be herself without fear of judgment or control. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I will marry you." He stood and pulled her to her feet, then cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, full of promise and restrained passion, and when they parted, they were both smiling. "We should do it soon," he said, "before you come to your senses and change your mind." She laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Before the whole town decides I am a fallen woman living in sin." That too. They were married a week later in the small church in Nevada City, with Yates's 2 ranch hands and the shopkeeper's wife as witnesses. Lydia wore a simple dress of blue cotton that the shopkeeper's wife had helped her make from fabric Yates had bought in town. She had no veil, no flowers, no family to witness the occasion. But as she stood beside Yates and listened to the preacher speak the words of the ceremony, she felt more certain of her choice than she had ever felt about anything in her life. When Yates slipped a plain gold band onto her finger and said, "I do," his voice was steady and sure. When she repeated the words back to him, she meant them with every fiber of her being. That night, in the bedroom that had been his alone for 3 years, he made love to her with careful tenderness, mindful of her relative inexperience, and determined to make her first time something beautiful rather than frightening. She responded to his touch with a passion that surprised them both, and afterward, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, she traced the scars on his chest from old injuries and felt gratitude for every twist of fate that had brought her to this moment. "Thank you," she whispered against his skin. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was at my worst and choosing to help anyway, for giving me a home and a future, for loving me." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for saying yes, for trusting me, for choosing this life with me." Fall arrived with cooler temperatures and golden leaves on the aspens that dotted the hillsides. Lydia settled into her role as a ranch wife with surprising ease. She learned to preserve vegetables and fruits for the winter, to make soap and candles, to help with the endless tasks that came with running a ranch. She befriended the wives of neighboring ranchers, women who accepted her without question and welcomed her into their informal community. The ranch hands, initially wary of having a woman around, grew to appreciate her cooking and her willingness to help with tasks like treating injured animals or mending tack. She had a way with the horses, they noticed, a calm presence that soothed even the most skittish mare. One afternoon in October, Lydia was in the garden harvesting the last of the squash when a rider approached the house. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun, and felt her heart skip with fear when she saw he was a stranger, well dressed in city clothes and riding a horse that was too fine for ranch work. Yates emerged from the barn, alerted by the sound of hoofbeats. He walked to meet the rider, positioning himself between the stranger and Lydia. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone neutral but wary. The man removed his hat. "I am looking for someone, a woman named Lydia Jenkins. I was told in town that a woman matching her description might be here." Lydia's hands tightened on the basket she was holding. Yates did not look back at her, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Why are you looking for her?" Yates asked. "I am an investigator hired by her family to locate her. They are very worried. She disappeared several months ago under concerning circumstances." "Her family," Yates said, his voice flat. "You mean her stepbrother who was trying to force her into marriage with a man twice her age?" The investigator had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I do not involve myself in family disputes. I was simply hired to find her and report her location." "Then you can report that you did not find her." Yates crossed his arms. "You can also tell her stepbrother that if he sends anyone else looking for her, they will meet the same result. She is not going back, not now, not ever." "I am afraid it is not that simple. Miss Jenkins is legally under her stepbrother's guardianship until she turns 25. He has the right to retrieve her. Miss Jenkins no longer exists. Lydia stepped forward, lifting her chin. I am Lydia Bradford now. I am a married woman, and under the law, my husband is my legal guardian, not my stepbrother. Thomas has no claim on me. The investigator looked between them, clearly recalculating his approach. You are married. We were married 2 months ago in Nevada City. You can verify it with the church records if you like. She moved to stand beside Yates, and he slipped an arm around her waist. You can tell Thomas that I am well. I am happy, and I am never coming back to St. Louis. Whatever control he thought he had over me is finished. The man studied them for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I will relay your message, though I suspect he will not be pleased. I do not care if he is pleased, Lydia said. I only care that he knows looking for me further will be a waste of his time and money. After the investigator left, Lydia sagged against Yates, her bravado crumbling. He found me. I knew it was possible, but I hoped he found you, and there is nothing he can do about it, Yates said firmly. You are my wife now. The law protects you as such. And even if it did not, I would protect you. No one is taking you from here, Lydia. Not your stepbrother, not anyone. She turned in his arms and buried her face against his chest. I was so afraid. For a moment, when I saw that man riding up, I thought my new life was over before it had truly begun. It will never be over. He tipped her face up to look at him. You are safe here. This is your home, and I am your family now. Nothing is going to change that. That night, as they lay in bed, Lydia found herself finally able to let go of the last threads of fear that had been holding her back. The investigator's visit had been frightening, but it had also been clarifying. She was truly free now, not just geographically distant from her old life, but legally and completely separated from it. She could build her future without constantly looking over her shoulder. Winter came early that year, with snow falling in November and temperatures dropping well below freezing. Lydia learned to appreciate the cozy warmth of the ranch house, the way firelight danced on the walls in the evening, the comfort of sleeping curled against Yates's warmth. They spent long evenings talking, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams for the future, the small daily observations that built intimacy between them. On Christmas morning, Yates gave her a music box he had ordered from San Francisco, a delicate thing of polished wood that played a sweet, tinkling melody. She gave him a vest she had sewn herself, decorated with intricate embroidery she had worked on in secret for weeks. I love you, she said as he tried it on. I do not think I have actually said those words to you yet, but I do. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. He pulled her close and kissed her deeply. I love you too. You have made this house a home again. You have made me whole again. In January, Lydia realized she was pregnant. She waited until she was certain, counting days and noting symptoms, before telling Yates. She chose a quiet evening when they were alone by the fire, the wind howling outside and snow piling up against the windows. I have news, she said, setting aside her mending. I am going to have a baby. Yates went very still. She watched fear and hope war across his face, knowing he was thinking of Margaret, of the tragedy that had taken both his wife and child. When? He asked, his voice rough. July, I think. Sometime in the middle of summer. He was quiet for so long that she began to worry. Then he moved to kneel beside her chair and laid his head in her lap, his arms going around her waist. I am terrified, he admitted. I cannot lose you. I cannot go through that again. She ran her fingers through his hair. You will not lose me. I am strong and healthy, and we will do everything right. We will get a doctor well before my time, and you will not be out on the range when it happens. We will be prepared. Promise me, he said, looking up at her. Promise me you will be all right." "I promise I will do everything in my power to be all right," she said carefully. "But Yates, you know I cannot promise what is not in my control. What I can promise is that I will fight to stay with you, that I want this baby and this life as much as you do, and that I am not going anywhere without giving it everything I have." He nodded, accepting what she could offer. Over the following months, he hovered over her with anxious care, insisting she rest more, lifting anything heavy, worrying over every small discomfort. She tolerated his fussing with patient amusement, understanding that it came from love and fear in equal measure. Spring came with wildflowers carpeting the meadows and new calves in the pastures. Lydia's belly swelled with the baby, and she found herself filled with a deep contentment. She would sit on the porch in the afternoon sunshine, one hand resting on her stomach, feeling the flutter of movement and marveling at the life growing inside her. In June, Yates brought the doctor out from town, a sensible man in his 50s named Dr. Pearson, who examined Lydia thoroughly and pronounced her in excellent health. "The baby is positioned well, and you are strong," he told her. "I see no reason why this should not be a straightforward birth, but I want you to send for me at the first sign of labor. Do not wait until the last minute. I will be riding into town myself the moment anything starts," Yates assured him. True to his word, when Lydia woke him in the early hours of a warm July morning to say her pains had begun, he was dressed and on his horse within minutes, racing to town to fetch the doctor. He returned to find her walking slowly around the bedroom, one hand pressed to her lower back, breathing through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the entire day and into the night. Yates stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, murmuring encouragement even when she cursed him for putting her through this. Dr. Pearson remained calm and reassuring, and the rancher's wife from the neighboring property, a woman named Helen who had delivered 6 children of her own, provided practical support and steady hands. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, Lydia gave one final, tremendous push, and the sound of a baby's cry filled the room. Yates felt tears streaming down his face as Dr. Pearson held up a squirming, red-faced infant. "You have a son," the doctor announced. Lydia collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and elated. Yates moved to her side as Helen quickly cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket, then placed him in Lydia's arms. "He is perfect," Lydia whispered, staring down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the miniature fingers that were already gripping her thumb. "Look what we made." Yates could not speak past the lump in his throat. He reached out to touch his son's cheek, marveling at the softness of the skin, the reality of this small, perfect person they had created together. "What should we name him?" Lydia asked. They had discussed names for months, debating and changing their minds. But looking at his son now, Yates knew exactly what felt right. "William," he said. "After my father, William Bradford." "William," Lydia repeated, testing it out. The baby made a small, mewling sound, and she smiled. "Hello, William. Welcome to the world, Doctor." Pearson finished his examination and pronounced both mother and baby healthy. "She needs rest and good food and no heavy work for at least a month," he instructed Yates. "But she came through it beautifully. You have a strong wife." After the doctor and Helen left, Yates lay down on the bed beside Lydia, the baby nestled between them. They spent the night like that, dozing fitfully, waking to watch William sleep, marveling at every tiny sound and movement. "Thank you," Yates said as dawn light began to creep through the window. "Thank you for being all right, for giving me this, for being the bravest person I have ever known." "Thank you for finding me when I was lost," Lydia replied. for saving my life and giving me a reason to live it. I did not know I could be this happy. The first year of William's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and small joys. Lydia discovered she loved being a mother, even the difficult parts. She loved the weight of the baby in her arms, the sweet smell of his head, the way he smiled when he saw her face. Yates was a devoted father, carrying William around the ranch in a sling Lydia had sewn, introducing him to the horses and cattle, singing him old cowboy songs in a surprisingly pleasant baritone. When William took his first steps at 10 months, lurching across the kitchen floor into Lydia's waiting arms, they both cheered as if he had accomplished something unprecedented. When he spoke his first word at a year old, it was Papa, and Yates looked so proud that Lydia could not even pretend to be jealous that it was not Mama. 2 years later, Lydia gave birth to twin daughters, Sarah and Emma, who arrived with considerably less drama than their brother and immediately took over the household with their demands and their charms. Yates loved all his children fiercely, but there was something special about his daughters, the way they wrapped him around their tiny fingers from the moment they were born. The ranch prospered over the years. Yates expanded his herd, bought more land, built a new barn and a larger bunkhouse for the growing number of ranch hands. Lydia managed the household with calm efficiency, raising their children, maintaining a large garden, and somehow still finding time to help with the ranch bookkeeping and correspondence. They had been married for 5 years when another letter arrived from St. Louis. Lydia recognized the handwriting on the envelope as belonging to her childhood friend, Mary, one of the few people from her old life she had stayed in contact with through occasional letters. She opened it at the kitchen table while Yates was outside with the children. As she read, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock to something like grim satisfaction. "What is it?" Yates asked when he came in to find her still sitting with the letter in her hands. "Thomas is dead," she said. "Mary writes that he was killed in a duel over a gambling debt. And Horace Whitmore, the man Thomas wanted me to marry, is in prison for murdering his third wife. Apparently, she tried to leave him, and he beat her to death in a rage. There were witnesses this time, and even his money and influence could not save him." Yates sat down across from her. "How do you feel?" "Relieved," she said slowly. "And grateful. If I had not gotten sick on that stagecoach, if you had not found me, I might have ended up dead like those other women. Every choice I made, even the ones that seemed disastrous at the time, led me away from that fate and toward this life." He reached across the table to take her hand. "Fate, luck, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, I am grateful too. Grateful that you stumbled into my town on that particular day, that I happened to be there to catch you when you fell. Do you ever think about what might have happened if you had not been there, if someone else had helped me, or if I had made it to the boarding house?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember that I do not believe in coincidences. You were meant to be here with me. I think I knew it the moment I saw you," she smiled. "You knew you were going to marry the sick, desperate woman collapsing in the street. I knew you were going to change my life. I was right." That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch together as they had so many times before. The summer air was warm and filled with the sound of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. Lydia rested her head on Yates's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" she asked. "When you brought me here, I said a lot of things that first day. You said I would be safe here, and I am. I have never felt safer than I do with you in this place we have built together." "This is your home," he said. "For as long as you want it." "Forever, then," she replied. "I want it forever." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges. William grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved working alongside his father on the ranch. The twins were inseparable, two halves of a whole, mischievous and bright, and always getting into some scrape or another. When they were 7, Lydia gave birth to another son, James, who arrived with a shock of red hair that matched his mother's and a stubborn streak that matched his father's. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Yates earned a reputation as a fair employer and a skilled cattleman, and their brand became known throughout Northern California. Lydia became involved in the community, helping to establish a proper school in Nevada City and serving on the church committee. She made quilts with the other ranch wives, hosted gatherings, and became known for her excellent cooking and her warm hospitality. But their favorite times were still the quiet evenings on the porch, just the two of them, watching the sun set over the mountains and talking about everything and nothing. On their 10th anniversary, Yates surprised her with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children in the care of Helen and her husband, and took the stagecoach to the city, staying in a real hotel and eating in restaurants and walking along the waterfront. Lydia had never seen the ocean before, and she stood on the beach with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by the vastness of it. "I was so small when I came here," she said, watching the waves roll in. "So frightened and alone. I thought the world was a cold, dangerous place where I had to fight for every scrap of happiness." "What do you think now?" Yates asked, standing beside her. "Now I think the world is as big and beautiful as this ocean. And I think I am the luckiest woman alive because I get to explore it with you." He pulled her close and kissed her, right there on the beach with seagulls crying overhead and salt spray in the air. "I love you, Lydia Bradford. I have loved you since the day you fell into my life, and I will love you until the day I die. And beyond," she said. "We will love each other beyond." They returned to the ranch refreshed and reconnected, ready to face whatever the future held. The children threw themselves into their parents' arms, chattering about everything that had happened in their absence. William had helped with the spring calving, the twins had learned a new song, and James had taken his first steps while they were gone. Life settled back into its comfortable rhythm. Seasons changed, children grew, the ranch thrived. There were hard times too, of course. A harsh winter when they lost part of the herd. A drought that tested their resources and resilience. The twins both caught scarlet fever and were desperately ill for weeks before recovering. Each challenge they faced together, supporting each other, drawing strength from the foundation they had built. When William turned 18, he announced his intention to stay on the ranch and work it alongside his father. Yates felt a deep satisfaction in knowing his son wanted to continue what he had started, to build on the legacy they had created together. The twins, now 16, were being courted by the sons of neighboring ranchers, though Lydia insisted they were too young to think seriously about marriage yet. "Let them be girls a while longer," she told Yates when he pointed out that she had been only 22 when they married. "They have not lived the life I lived. They do not need to rush into adulthood." James, at 10, was already showing signs of being the family scholar, more interested in books than cattle, talking about maybe becoming a lawyer or teacher someday. Yates supported this fully, pleased that his children had opportunities and choices he had never had. On a warm evening in late summer, the whole family gathered on the expanded porch for dinner. Lydia looked around the table at her husband, her children, the ranch hands who had become like family, and felt a swell of gratitude so intense it nearly took her breath away. After the meal, as the younger children ran off to play and William headed to the barn to check on a mare about to foal, Yates and Lydia remained at the table, hands clasped, watching the last light fade from the sky. You remember what you said to me the night I proposed? Yates asked. I said many things that night. You said you did not want to be a burden I took on out of obligation. I remember. You have never been a burden, not for a single day. You have been my partner, my best friend, the love of my life. You saved me just as surely as I saved you that day in town. You brought me back to life when I thought I would spend the rest of my days just going through the motions. Lydia felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, he could still move her with his words. We saved each other, she said. That is what love does. It takes two broken people and makes them whole together. I would choose you again, he said. In every lifetime, in every version of this story, I would choose you. And I would choose you. I would stumble off that stage coach 1,000 times if it meant ending up here in this life with you. They sat in comfortable silence as stars began to appear overhead. From the barn came William's shout of triumph, signaling that the mare had successfully delivered her foal. The twins' laughter rang out from somewhere near the creek. James appeared in the doorway to ask if he could stay up late to finish his book, and Lydia nodded her permission. This was her life now, full and rich and exactly what she had dreamed of during those dark days in St. Louis, when she had thought she would never be free. She had arrived in Nevada City sick and afraid, with nothing but a carpetbag and desperation. And she had found everything she needed in the form of a steady-eyed cowboy who had seen past her illness to the woman beneath, who had offered help without expectation, and who had loved her with a constancy that had become the bedrock of her existence. As the years continued to pass, their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened and matured, like good wine aging in a barrel. They learned each other's rhythms and moods, developed their own private jokes and references, built a shared history that was uniquely theirs. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their faces developing lines that told the story of years spent laughing and working and living under the California sun. They became grandparents when William married a lovely young woman named Catherine and had 3 children of his own. The twins both married within a year of each other and settled on nearby ranches, keeping the family close. James went to university in San Francisco and became a lawyer, but he came home often, drawn back by the ties of family and love. On their 30th anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a party at the ranch, inviting half the county. Lydia wore a new dress in deep blue, and Yates wore the vest she had made him all those years ago, which still fit despite the passage of time. During the celebration, William stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. That family is built on respect and partnership, that a life well lived is one spent in service to those you love. Thank you for showing us what a real marriage looks like." Lydia cried, of course, and Yates's eyes were suspiciously bright. They held hands throughout the rest of the party, accepting congratulations and well wishes, but mostly just happy to be together, surrounded by the family and community they had built. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, they returned to their spot on the porch. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the air smelled of hay and horses and the distant scent of pine from the mountains. 30 years, Lydia mused. It seems impossible. It feels like yesterday that I stumbled off that stage coach. The best 30 years of my life, Yates said. Every single day with you has been a gift. Even the hard days, the times we argued or struggled, especially those days, because those are the ones that proved our love was strong enough to weather anything. She leaned her head on his shoulder, fitting perfectly into the space that had been hers for 3 decades. I wonder sometimes what that sick, frightened girl would think if she could see me now, if she would believe this was possible. I think she would be proud. Proud of the woman she became, the life she built, the family she raised. I think she would be grateful, Lydia said softly. Grateful for the cowboy who saw her when she was at her worst and chose to help anyway, who healed her body and restored her spirit, who gave her everything she never dared to dream of. Yates kissed the top of her head, a gesture so familiar it was almost unconscious. I think that cowboy would say he was the lucky one, that stumbling into his life was the best thing that ever happened to him. They sat together in the darkness, two souls intertwined, two lives joined so completely that it was impossible to say where one ended and the other began. The ranch house stood solid behind them, filled with memories and love. The land stretched out before them, acres they had worked and tended and passed on to the next generation. The sky blazed with stars, bearing witness to a love story that had begun with an act of kindness and grown into something eternal. As they finally rose to go inside, Lydia paused on the threshold and looked back at the night. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about every twist and turn of fate that had led to this moment. She thought about the woman she had been and the woman she had become. And she knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single thing. "Ready?" Yates asked, holding out his hand. She took it, her fingers lacing through his with the ease of long practice. "Always," she said. "I am always ready as long as I am with you." They walked into the house together, closing the door on another perfect day. Outside, the wind whispered through the grass, the horses moved quietly in the barn, and the mountains stood silent under the stars. The ranch slept, peaceful and protected, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, hope over despair, each other over everything else. And in the years that followed, as they continued to age and their family continued to grow, the story of Yates and Lydia Bradford became part of the local legend. People told it to their children and grandchildren. The tale of the sick woman who arrived on a stagecoach and the cowboy who took her in, how their unexpected love had created a dynasty that would last for generations. But to Yates and Lydia, it was never a legend or a story. It was simply their life, lived one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of love at a time. They had started with nothing but need and compassion, and had built something that would outlast them both, something that would echo down through the years in the faces of their descendants and the land they had tended. When Lydia was 73, she fell ill again, though this time it was not pneumonia but a weak heart that the doctor said had finally worn out after a long, full life. Yates, now 75, never left her side. He held her hand through the difficult days, read to her when she had the strength to listen, and simply sat with her when she did not. Their children came, their grandchildren, even their great-grandchildren, each one stopping by to say goodbye, to tell her they loved her, to thank her for the life she had given them. On a quiet afternoon in late autumn, with golden leaves drifting past the window and Yates holding her hand, Lydia took her last breath. She went peacefully, a small smile on her face, surrounded by love. Yates felt a part of himself die with her. But he also felt gratitude for every moment they had shared, every day they had been given. He had loved her completely, and he had been loved completely in return. What more could any person ask for in a lifetime? He buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, under an oak tree they had planted together on their 10th anniversary. The whole county came to the funeral, bearing witness to a life well lived and a love that had touched countless others. Yates lived for 2 more years, long enough to see William firmly established as the head of the ranch, long enough to hold his newest great-grandchild, long enough to arrange his affairs and make peace with his mortality. He visited Lydia's grave every day, sitting under the oak tree and talking to her, telling her about the ranch, the family, all the small details of life she would have wanted to know. When his heart finally gave out on a spring morning, his children found him in his bed, a peaceful expression on his face and a letter on the nightstand addressed to all of them. In it, he thanked them for being the joy of his life, asked them to take care of each other and the ranch, and told them not to mourn him too deeply. "I lived a full life," he wrote. "I knew true love, raised a good family, and built something lasting. When you think of me, remember the happy times. Remember your mother and how much we loved each other and all of you. And know that wherever we are now, she and I are together again, exactly as we were always meant to be." They buried him next to Lydia under the oak tree. Over time, the tree grew and spread, its branches offering shade to anyone who came to visit, its roots intertwining deep in the earth, just as Yates and Lydia's lives had been intertwined from the moment they met. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Each new generation heard the story of how it all began, of the sick woman and the cowboy who saved her, of the love that had transformed both their lives and created a legacy that endured. And if, on quiet evenings when the wind whispered just right, people claimed they could sometimes see two figures sitting on the porch of the old house, hands clasped and heads bent together, well, no one questioned it. Some loves, people said, were too strong to be contained by a single lifetime. Some loves echoed through eternity, a testament to the power of two hearts choosing each other against all odds. The story of Yates and Lydia Bradford became more than just family history. It became a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best things. That kindness and compassion can change the course of destiny. That love, real love, has the power to heal not just bodies but spirits, not just individuals but entire communities. Young couples visited their graves on anniversaries, hoping some of that enduring love would bless their own relationships. The Bradford Ranch became a symbol of what could be built when people chose partnership over pride, cooperation over competition, love over fear. And through it all, the story remained the same, simple and powerful. A woman arrived sick and afraid. A cowboy healed her body and restored her spirit. They fell in love, built a life, and created something that would outlast them both. It was a story as old as time, yet unique to them, universal yet deeply personal. It was their story, and it was a good one, full of all the things that matter most: love, family, courage, and the unshakable belief that tomorrow could be better than today. The ranch stood for over a century, weathering storms and droughts, economic downturns and changing times. Each generation added their own chapter to the story, but they never forgot the foundation that Yates and Lydia had laid. The values they had instilled became part of the land itself, woven into every fence post and barn beam, echoed in every sunrise over the mountains. And so the story continued, passed down through the years, adapted and embellished but never losing its essential truth. A woman arrived sick and afraid. A cowboy healed her body and restored her spirit. They fell in love and lived happily ever after, creating a legacy that would inspire countless others to believe in the transformative power of love, the importance of kindness to strangers, and the possibility of second chances. Their love story became a beacon, a light in the darkness, proof that even in the hardest times, even when you think you have nothing left, there is always hope. There is always the possibility that tomorrow might bring something wonderful. There is always the chance that a stranger's kindness might change your life forever. And in the end, that was perhaps the greatest gift Yates and Lydia Bradford gave to the world. Not just their descendants or their ranch or their example of enduring love, but the simple, powerful reminder that we all have the capacity to heal each other, to restore each other's spirits, to help each other become the people we were meant to be. All it takes is the courage to extend a hand when someone is falling, the wisdom to recognize that everyone carries burdens we cannot see, and the open heart to offer help without expecting anything in return. That was how their story began, with a simple act of compassion on a hot July day in 1878. And that was how their legacy continued, through every descendant who chose kindness over indifference, every person who offered help to a stranger in need, every couple who chose to build something lasting together, based on mutual respect and genuine love. The oak tree on the hill grew tall and strong, its branches reaching toward the sky as if in celebration. And if you stood beneath it on a quiet evening, you might feel what so many visitors claim to feel: a sense of peace, of rightness, of two souls perfectly matched and eternally joined. You might understand, even if just for a moment, what it means to love completely and be completely loved in return. That was the story of Yates and Lydia Bradford. That was their gift to the world. And in a life full of uncertainty and struggle, it was a gift beyond measure, a testament to the enduring power of love to heal, to restore, and to transform. From the moment she stumbled off that stage coach to the moment they were laid to rest side by side under the oak tree, their lives had been a testament to the power of choosing love, of choosing each other, of choosing to believe in the possibility of happiness, even when it seemed impossibly far away. And they lived, truly lived, happily ever after.